strong coffee. The table was festively set. This time Marie had prepared a 5-course menu, and since the dining room was above the kitchen and connected by a food elevator, she only had to put the dishes in and press the button. As soon as they reached the upper floor, Ethelbert could remove them from the tiny lift. Cream of mushroom soup and pan-seared halloumi were served as appetizers. Then the butler offered a blackcurrant sorbet to refresh the palate, followed by stuffed bell peppers and Kalamata toast as the main course. For dessert, Marie had prepared mousse au chocolat. When Aunt Hedwig had finished the first sweet spoonful, she gushed and insisted on speaking to the chef at once. When Marie came up from the kitchen, still wearing a chef's cap and apron, Aunt Hedwig insisted that she join them at the table. "That was a wonderful menu," she exclaimed. "But tell me, young lady, how is it that you can cook so well?" Marie retold the same story she had relayed to the Count. She had learned to cook from her father, the master chef, Paul de Remoulade, from an early age. One of Marie's great-grandfathers even cooked for the French king, the Count interjected. "Really?" asked Aunt Hedwig. "For which one, may I ask? Not for André I, for instance?" And she smiled imperceptibly. Yes," replied Marie hastily. "You're right, exactly, André I. My great-grandfather cooked for him, indeed." "Well, well," Aunt Hedwig stretched and turned back to her dessert. "After this delicious meal, I feel 20 years younger," she sighed contentedly. "But a little nap can't hurt before we go for a ride." "What? You want to go for a ride today, Aunt Hedwig?" the Count asked, not anticipating her sudden plans. Then Tina thought of something. "My mother has invited us all this afternoon to Martin's farm. She baked fresh butter cake." "Wonderful!" Aunt Hedwig looked around happily. "So we are going on a trip to Martin's farm. You come along too, of course." She looked at Marie. "Do you know how to ride?" "Yes, of course," Marie nodded, and her eyes lit up. "We even had our own horse once. My mother used to ride a lot. She needed it for practicing her roles." "Marie's mother was an actress," explained Tina, whereupon Aunt Hedwig wanted to know in which movies she had acted. "Well, one of my favorite movies is The Master Thief of London," Marie said immediately. "It's about a young girl. Her name is Mary McMuffin. She finds it unfair that some people are rich and others are poor, so she becomes a master thief and ensures justice." "But you do not get justice by breaking the law," the Count objected. "Surely things have come to a bad end with this Mary McMuffin." "No, not at all," replied Marie. "When she broke into the house of a rich count, his son caught her, but then he fell in love with her, and in the end they got married." "That seems pretty unrealistic." The Count dabbed his mouth disapprovingly with a white cloth napkin. "Oh, Falco, darling, must you always be so strict?" laughed Aunt Hedwig. "Where is your sense of humor? Anyway, I have seen this film and enjoyed it very much. If I am not mistaken, it begins with the theft of a valuable diamond necklace, right?" She looked at Marie. She almost choked and had to cough. "Yes, exactly," she replied. But the next moment she smiled at Aunt Hedwig. "The necklace looks almost like yours. Are they actually the 5 stars of the firmament? Because the Count told me about them." All eyes were on the precious necklace. "Yes, they are," replied Aunt Hedwig. "Pretty, aren't they?" Marie nodded. "Yes, beautiful. I never thought diamonds could sparkle with such rare colors." Aunt Hedwig winked mischievously at her. "I only hope you do not like the necklace so much that you want to steal it from me. That would be a pity, because there's nothing better for an old lady to distract from her wrinkles." Marie looked startled for a moment, until Aunt Hedwig burst out laughing. All the others laughed along. Aunt Hedwig really had a fantastic sense of humor. The old lady stood up. "I'm going to have a short beauty sleep," she announced, "and then we'll go for a ride. And you," she looked at Falco von Falkenstein, "of course you'll come too, won't you?" The Count cleared his throat. "On one condition, Aunt Hedwig," he said. "The necklace stays here. On a trip, it could easily be damaged or lost. I will keep it in my secret compartment." "All right, for my sake, Falco." The Countess took off the necklace without further discussion and handed it to her nephew. "Well then, just bring the jewels to safety." After Aunt Hedwig had finished her beauty sleep, the ride could begin. Harry had mounted a special side saddle on the Arabian mare, Arabia, owing to the fact that Aunt Hedwig had decided to mount the horse in an old-fashioned riding costume. Marie was absolutely thrilled to ride Ulishka, a beautiful Hungarian mare that the Count had bought from Zendro Stud a few years ago. Marie had a flair for horses. Ulishka obeyed her perfectly. After they had trotted for a while, Marie clicked her tongue, pressed her lower legs against Yulishka's flanks, and off they galloped. Bibi, Tina, and Alex followed her, while the Count and Aunt Hedwig took the opportunity to talk in peace. When the group had arrived at Martin's farm, Aunt Hedwig was happy to see Suzanne Martin and Roger again and immediately invited them to her birthday party. While the coffee table was set in the garden, Bibi and Tina gave Marie a tour of the farm. On their way to the stable, Highness, the billy goat, ran straight up to them. He was not usually interested in strangers, but he seemed to take an immediate liking to Marie. He came closer and poked at her with his horns. He even followed them into the stable, where Bibi and Tina wanted to show Marie their favorite place, the hayloft. "How lovely you have it here," Marie suddenly said as they stood at the foot of the ladder. "I would also like to live on Martin's farm." "Really?" Tina was surprised. "Don't you think it's great that you can travel so much? Wherever you go, you can cook and even make money from it. It's totally exciting." "Well, traveling is fun," Marie replied. "But cooking isn't always so exciting for me. I learned it from childhood, but to be honest, sometimes I find it rather tedious." "Well, I think you both have it really good," Bibi interjected. "Tina can ride whenever she wants, and you, Marie, make everyone happy with your amazing food. I always have to go to that boring school in Newtown." "But you can do magic, Bibi," Marie reminded her. Bibi had to smile. "You're right. Actually, all three of us are pretty lucky. Funny how you always think others have it better." Tina and Marie nodded thoughtfully. While the three of them talked to each other, His Highness, the billy goat, had come to Marie. "Bah! Bah!" he bleated, and Marie laughed. "What's your name?" she asked. "Let me introduce you to His Highness," said Tina. Marie took a closer look at the billy goat. "I think he looks like—" She lowered her voice and whispered, "Count Falkenstein." "Well observed," said Bibi. "That's who he's named after." "Yes, because of his smart goatee," laughed Tina. In any case, His Highness seemed to have taken a true liking to Marie. Again and again, he nudged her with his horns. Marie was just leaning down to stroke him when Mrs. Martin called out that the coffee was served. "What a pity," said Marie. "We'll look at the hayloft later." The three of them hurried out of the barn, while His Highness looked on disappointedly. Shortly afterwards, everyone was sitting around the coffee table. "Really splendid, your butter cake," enthused Marie after she had tasted a piece of it. "Do you think so?" asked Tina's mother. "Yes, absolutely," nodded Marie. "Would you mind sharing the recipe later?" "Oh, yes, I'd love to," said Mrs. Martin, who was delighted that Marie was so impressed by her simple treat. All of a sudden, the drone of an engine crescendoed into the courtyard as a car drove into the yard. The conversation at once fell silent because it wasn't a normal car that was parked there, but a police cruiser. A man got out. His bushy eyebrows, square-shaped crown, and narrow mustache gave him an intimidating look of authority. Bibi noticed that Marie had turned completely pale. Her hand shot up convulsively and clutched the silver medallion that hung around her neck. The man came towards her. "Sergeant Quincy," he introduced himself. "Good afternoon." "How do you do?" Mrs. Martin stood up. "How can we help you, Sergeant?" "Is Count of Falkenstein here?" he asked. "Yes, that's me." The Count stood up and joined the policeman. "You wish to see me?" The sergeant explained briefly that he had come from Falkenstein Castle and had been sent here by the butler before he got down to business. "You've surely heard about the break-in at, Prince Russell's?" he asked the Count. "I'm investigating the case." He looked at the Count sharply. "I'm here to give you a clear warning. Have you noticed anything suspicious lately?" "Suspicious? What do you mean?" "Has a stranger been hanging around your castle, or has someone taken an interest in your valuables?" "No, yes," the Count replied. "Who?" The sergeant's face took on a watchful expression. "My chef," replied the Count, pointing at Marie. "She was interested in my historical horseshoe collection." The sergeant examined the young woman critically. "Who are you, miss?" "Me? This is Marie de Remoulade, young man," Aunt Hedwig interrupted. "A very good cook." "Indeed," agreed the Count. "Her father is the master chef, Paul de Remoulade. One of her great-grandfathers cooked for the French king." "Well, fancy that." The sergeant tensed his back. "I don't know anything about master chefs, but I do go after criminals." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a business card, which he handed to the Count. "Here, my number's on there. Don't hesitate to call me if you see anything suspicious. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen." With this, he turned and walked back to his car. While Marie's gaze was fixed on the police car, she suddenly felt something rough on her hand. It was His Highness, the billy goat, nudging her with his head. Marie bent down to him. Her silver medallion on the long chain dangled merrily back and forth before his eyes until it caught around one of his horns. The billy goat threw his head back in shock and the chain snapped. Marie cried out. "What happened?" Tina spoke. She saw His Highness running wildly through the garden. "My chain!" cried Marie. "It's wrapped around his horn." "We'll get it back," said Bibi reassuringly. "Come, Tina." Bibi and Tina chased the billy goat through the yard until they succeeded in holding him steady. Bibi untangled the chain and gave it back to Marie. "But the locket," she moaned. "The locket is gone." Apparently, the pendant had slipped off the chain and was now lying somewhere in the garden. Everyone helped search for it, even Aunt Hedwig, and it was she who finally found the pendant and gave it back to Marie. "This medallion must be very important to you, child," asked Aunt Hedwig. "Yes," said Marie. "It is. It's a memory of my mother." She was even paler than before. With a torn chain in one hand and the medallion in the other, she seemed confused and lost. Bibi offered to fix the chain quickly. "Oh, could you do that?" cried Marie, relieved. "Sure," said Bibi. "If I may?" She took a look at Mrs. Martin, who nodded, also recognizing how important the necklace and pendant were for Marie. Bibi stretched out her arms. "Eeny, meeny, tail to mane, affix the locket to the chain. Whiz, whiz." A pling sound ran out as Witch's stars sparkled and flashed. A timid smile appeared on Marie's face. "Thank you, Bibi." She pulled the chain and medallion back around her neck. The Count cleared his throat loudly. "That was an exciting afternoon. I think it's time we return to the castle." Shortly afterwards, the Count, Aunt Hedwig, Alex, and Marie sat on their horses and rode off. Bibi and Tina stood at the gate and waved after them. "What about you, Tina?" Bibi asked. "Did you also notice how scared Marie got when Sergeant Quincy showed up?" "No, I didn't notice that," Tina said. "But the thing with the necklace really got to her. Poor Marie." Bibi sighed. She knew that if she expressed any suspicion now, Tina would probably think she was being too harsh. After all, Bibi had no proof whatsoever, only this nagging feeling. And to make it worse, her witch's nose itched again. A strenuous day. When Bibi and Tina entered the castle kitchen the next morning, Marie was dictating a shopping list to Alex. "Hello, you two," she greeted Bibi and Tina. "Today we're riding to Falkenstein to the market. Would you like to come along?" "Sure." Bibi was happy for a change of mood. "When we finish shopping, we can have an ice cream together," Tina suggested. "Good idea," said Marie. "That'll be fun. But after that, we have to get back here and start with the preparations." The next day was Aunt Hedwig's birthday, when all the relatives would arrive, and Marie had planned to prepare an elaborate 7-course menu for the occasion. The 4 of them told the Count and Aunt Hedwig they were leaving, then saddled the horses and rode off. With clacking hooves, they trotted through the small town only a short while later. When they reached the marketplace, they tied the horses to a few tall birch trees opposite the Falkenstein Inn. Marie pointed to the bright red, half-timbered building. "Is that a hotel?" "Yes," nodded Tina. "The best address in Falkenstein." "Do you need a hotel?" Alex asked. "You live with us at the castle." Marie shrugged her shoulders only slightly. "Oh, I'm just asking. You never know," she said. The weekly market was already in full swing. Farmers and traders from the surrounding areas offered fresh fruit and vegetables at their stalls. Marie chose the very finest ingredients. She turned each potato over one by one and examined each carrot carefully before buying it. Then she went to the butcher and the baker, where Marie chose her pieces with the same care and scrutiny. Her items would be delivered later to the castle. "Do we have everything now?" Alex asked. "Almost. Now I just have to go to one store," said Marie. "But I'll do that alone." "What do you need?" Tina asked. "Oh, a bit of makeup," Marie replied. "Lipstick and things like that." "What would that be for?" Bibi wondered out loud. "I want to look pretty for Aunt Hedwig's birthday," said Marie. "Meet me in half an hour at the ice cream parlor, okay?" Everyone agreed to that. After Marie had finished her shopping, and, together with Bibi, Tina, and Alex, had eaten a delicious sundae, the 4 of them rode back to the castle. There, they went straight back to the kitchen to prepare lunch for the Count and Aunt Hedwig. The long trip and yesterday's outing had fatigued Aunt Hedwig somewhat, so she finished her midday meal and retired for a nap. The Count returned to his office to work on a birthday speech he'd planned to give the following day. The marketplace orders had arrived at the castle, and the dishes for tomorrow's celebration had to be prepared. Marie made it quite clear to the kids. If you want to cook a menu with 7 courses, everything depends on the right preparation. Come late afternoon, Bibi and Tina were thoroughly exhausted as they readied themselves for the trip back to Martin's farm. "Well, we'll see you tomorrow," Tina said to Marie. "When shall we come?" "Tomorrow? Oh, yes." Marie's mind seemed to be somewhere else. "You don't have to come so early," she finally said. "Fortunately, we've managed well with preparing everything." But before Bibi and Tina finally said goodbye, Marie took them both in her arms. "Thanks for everything," she said. Bibi noticed a tear in the corner of Marie's eye, which trickled slowly down her cheek. "What's wrong, Marie?" she asked, rather startled. "Oh, nothing." Marie resolutely wiped the tear away with the back of her hand. "I was just thinking that I'll be leaving here soon." "Maybe, but we'll see you tomorrow at least," said Tina. Marie laughed again. "Tomorrow we'll deliver our masterpiece, a 7-course dinner." When Bibi and Tina returned to Martin's farm, their work was far from over. The animals needed to be fed and the stables urgently needed cleaning. It was no wonder that the two fell into their beds shortly after dinner, dead tired. Tina was fast asleep in a matter of minutes. Bibi, on the other hand, still had a lot on her mind. She thought of Marie and how the young woman had said goodbye to them. It had almost been like saying goodbye forever, hadn't it? Maybe it was. The thought shot through Bibi's head. She thought of her itchy witch's nose and the feeling that something was wrong. Could Marie be the burglar from Redwell? And could she now be after Aunt Hedwig's necklace? Then she wouldn't wait until the next day when all the Count's relatives would arrive. She would rather strike quickly, wouldn't she? As fast as possible. Bibi was startled. But that would mean only one thing. Tonight. Bibi's heart beat faster and her witch's nose itched even more intensely. What could she do? Ride to the castle and warn the Count? Confront Marie? Wake Tina to talk to her about her suspicions? But it was only a suspicion she had. She had no proof. At last, a reassuring thought came over her. Even if Marie was a burglar, even if she wanted to steal the necklace, she could not have known where the Count had hidden it. The necklace was safe in any case. Bibi's weariness gained the upper hand. Her heart was beating normally again as she closed her eyes. Although her nose still had that funny itching feeling, she buried her head deep into an oversized pillow and fell asleep. The perfect disguise. A palpable stillness befell the castle. The Count, however, was still sitting in his office writing the birthday speech for his aunt. He could concentrate best in the evenings, when it was quiet and everyone was asleep. But Marie was still awake. She sat in front of a large oak dresser with mirrored doors and rummaged through her backpack. She unearthed a mess of small tubes, jars, tassels, and brushes. Then she took a flashlight and put on a gray-haired wig she had bought in Falkenstein. It was a daring plan she had devised, a plan that Mary McMuffin, the master thief of London, might have also considered. Marie's heart was beating wildly, but if she wanted to find out where the Count had hidden the necklace, she had to take a risk. Simply asking the Count for it would be of no use, and the only person he might tell was Aunt Hedwig. Marie uncapped a tube of cream tinted in the skin tone of Aunt Hedwig. She applied it thinly to her neck and face, then dipped a fine brush into a pot of greasy, light brown makeup. Carefully, she painted wrinkles at the corners of the mouth, around the eyes, and on the forehead. As a finishing touch, she used a white pencil to apply fine lines under and over each wrinkle before lightly smudging them with her finger, making them look realistic. Whenever her mother had performed in theater or been on film shoots, Marie loved to join her in the makeup department and watch her transform. She was fascinated to see how dresses and wigs could also change the actors, and the makeup and wardrobe artists had taught her many tricks. When Marie was satisfied with the wrinkles, she brushed in faint shadows under her eyes, on her cheeks and temples. She powdered her face, then applied rouge and mascara. After she had tinted her eyebrows white with the eyeliner pencil, Marie pulled the wig over her head and carefully stuffed her dark, unruly curls underneath. Yes, now she looked really old, but for a perfect appearance, something was still missing. The costume, Aunt Hedwig's dress and her hat. With this, nobody would be able to distinguish her from the real Aunt Hedwig. For a moment, Marie had an unpleasant feeling. Was it right what she was doing here? But she quickly pushed the thought aside. She had a plan, a phenomenal plan. She'd been mulling it over all day long while she'd stood in the kitchen chopping vegetables. She knew exactly what she had to do. Marie took the flashlight and quietly opened the bedroom door. On tiptoe, she crept cat-like across the hallway. Aunt Hedwig's room was opposite her own. Marie opened the door and entered. It was pitch dark. She stood there motionless for a few moments and listened to the rhythm of Aunt Hedwig's breath. The old lady was fast asleep. Marie turned on the flashlight and let the beam shoot through the room. She immediately switched it off again. Aunt Hedwig was not to be woken up under any circumstances. She had seen that the hat was beside the dresser. Marie groped her way there and put it on. But where was the dress? Probably in the closet, Marie wondered. It was right next to the door. But when Marie tried to open it, it squeaked. Aunt Hedwig shifted under the covers and then turned around in bed. Marie froze. If Aunt Hedwig woke up, turned on the light, and found her there in front of the closet, what could she say? Marie held her breath until she could hear the old lady return to peaceful slumber. She opened the closet door so agonizingly slow that it seemed like an eternity before she could finally see inside. Marie briefly switched on the flashlight. She saw the dress hanging neatly on a hanger and hastily snatched it off, leaving the closet door open. She crept back to her room, put on the dress, and looked in the mirror. She was nearly startled. Her disguise was perfect. Marie did not even recognize herself anymore. Now came the second part of the plan. To convince the Count. Marie knew she could succeed. She simply imagined it as her own theater show, playing the famous master thief, Mary McMuffin, who would steal the necklace of a rich old countess to get justice. Marie exhaled a long, deep breath. Then she left the room again. As she stood in front of the Count's office, she paused for a few moments. Should she really go through with this? Was it right to betray the Count in this way? Marie hesitated. Then she raised her hand and knocked at the door. Perhaps the Count was no longer sitting at his desk. She was overcome with nervous energy. Maybe he had long gone to sleep. For a moment, Marie hoped with all her heart that that might be the case. Then she heard his voice. "Come in." A book with no pages. "Aunt Hedwig, what brings you here at such an hour?" The Count, who had almost finished writing his birthday speech, looked bewildered. "Falco, darling!" cried Marie. She threw her arms up theatrically and sighed. "Oh, I can't sleep." "Please sit down first, Aunt Hedwig." The Count pointed to one of two chairs that stood in front of his desk. A single lamp illuminated the room, and when Marie sat down, she moved the chair so that her face remained in the shadow. "Are you worried?" The Count bent forward, crossed his hands, and laid them on the desk. "Yes, about my necklace," said Marie in Aunt Hedwig's voice. "I want it back." "But of course you'll get it back, Auntie." The Count shook his head almost indulgently. "But only tomorrow. Tonight it stays in my secret hiding place. It's safe there, believe me." Marie had already feared that she would not get the necklace so easily. She let her eyes wander unobtrusively through the room. She was convinced that the Count had hidden it somewhere here in the study. On the wall was an open fireplace, above which hung an oil painting. Marie decided to proceed with cunning. "Falco, darling, let me guess where you've hidden it," she said. "All right. Why not?" The Count nodded amusedly. "But you'll never guess." "We'll see about that." Marie pointed resolutely at the artwork. "Behind the painting. There's a safe, and in it is the necklace, am I right?" The Count raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Indeed, Aunt Hedwig," he said, amused. "At least you're not completely off." He stood up and removed the picture above the fireplace. Indeed, there was a safe embedded in the wall behind it. "But—" The Count turned the combination lock until a soft click sounded and he could open the door. "I didn't hide the necklace here. Any mediocre burglar would come up with this idea. This safe is just a decoy." The Count looked triumphantly at his supposed aunt. "Falco, Falco!" Marie cried. "What a sly fox you are! Now you really make me curious. Please tell me where you hid the necklace, and I promise I'll leave you alone." "All right, Aunt Hedwig," said the Count. He closed the safe and hung the picture in front of it again. Then he stepped to the door. "The secret hiding place is in the library," he announced. "But this remains between us, yes?" "Of course, Falco. No one will ever find out from me." Marie wasn't going to tell anybody. She denied herself a smile. In the library, hundreds of book spines were staring at them, stacked row upon row on ceiling-high shelves. The Count climbed up a ladder and removed a thick, leather-bound work from a shelf near the very top. When he stood in front of Marie with it, she could read what was written on the cover in gold-embossed lettering. "But this is the 7th volume of the family chronicle, Falco." The Count smiled cunningly. "Never judge a book by its cover, dear auntie," he said. He set it down on the reading table and opened it to reveal a hollow space that had been cut into the unprinted pages. Inside, like in a small box, was the necklace, the 5 stars of the firmament. "Now I am completely reassured," said Marie. It cost her a great deal of concentration to remain in character, as she sat momentarily enraptured by the diamonds glittering in the light of the ceiling lamp. "A really excellent hiding place, Falco. I'm going to sleep now." With these words, she left the library through the door leading out into the hallway. Before that, she turned around once more. "Good night, my boy. Don't work so much anymore, and please do try to get some sleep for the big day," she said, pulling the door closed behind her. Birdsong filled Count Falco's bedroom from an open window. Although he had worked such long hours the day before, he felt fresh and lively. The birthday speech was finished, and in it was the story of how Johannes had received the famous necklace from the Maharaja of Kashmir. With this speech and Marie's excellent food, the birthday party would surely be a great success. After the Count had carefully chosen his suit for the day, he stepped out into the corridor, then knocked on the door of Alexander's room. "On your feet, my son," he cried merrily. Full of verve, the Count nearly danced down the stairs, where Ethelbert had already set the breakfast table for 3 people. Placed directly in the center, as the Count had ordered the day before, stood a large bouquet of flowers for Aunt Hedwig. Falco von Falkenstein was looking forward to his breakfast. Since Marie had arrived at the castle, every day had started out with a memorable feast, and today would be no different. No sooner had he settled down than butler Ethelbert entered the room to serve breakfast. The Count shook his head in utter confusion. The top slices of toast were clearly burnt. "Ahem! Ethelbert," he inquired cautiously, "didn't Miss Marie prepare breakfast today?" "I suppose Miss Marie is still asleep," replied the butler, and poured him tea. "In any case, she hasn't shown up yet." "Well, well," muttered the Count, but he decided not to let his good mood be spoiled. After all, Marie had been extremely reliable until now. "She'll get up yet," he said generously. "After all, it's still quite early in the morning." At that moment, the door opened again. Alexander and Aunt Hedwig entered. "Good morning, Falco, darling." "Ah, what beautiful flowers," cried Aunt Hedwig. "Are they for me?" "Of course," nodded the Count. "Happy birthday, my dearest Aunt Hedwig," he sang, taking her in his arms and giving her a gentlemanly kiss on each cheek. Only now did he notice that she was still wearing her nightgown, which the Count found remarkably odd, as his dignified aunt usually attached great importance to her wardrobe. When he inquired about the reason, she explained to him that the dress she had wanted to wear today had disappeared. So had her hat. "You are up to something, Falco," she said, threatening him with a smile and forefinger. "A birthday surprise, isn't it? Oh, how exciting. You know how much I love surprises." "This is by no means a birthday surprise, Aunt Hedwig," the Count returned. "I rather suspect, that Ethelbert put the dress in the laundry." Otherwise, he was baffled as to what might have happened to it. But what about the hat? The Count decided to change the subject. "How did you sleep, Aunt Hedwig, after your visit with me last night?" Aunt Hedwig, who had just buttered her toast, looked up from her plate in surprise. "Wonderful, Falco, as always. But what do you mean by my visit last night?" "Well," replied the Count, rather confused, "you couldn't fall asleep last night because you were so worried about your necklace." "Pardon? You must have been dreaming, dear Falco. You know that I never worry about anything, especially not about my necklace." The Count blinked, said nothing, and took his first sip of tea, which tasted just lovely. What a strange morning, he thought. Marie was still asleep, although today was particularly busy. Aunt Hedwig's dress and her hat had disappeared, and now his aunt didn't even remember their nightly conversation. Something clearly wasn't right here. An unpleasant hunch rose up in the Count, and he excused himself after hastily finishing his breakfast, claiming that he had to check something in the family chronicle, which was absolutely true. For this, he apologized, and then left the dining room. In the entrance hall, Ethelbert was polishing the marble floor. "Did you put my aunt's dress in the laundry?" the Count asked him. "Did you order this, Sir Highness?" the butler asked back. No, I didn't," said the Count impatiently. "Then I did not." Butler Ethelbert polished on calmly. The Count, however, hurried nervously up the stairs, crossing the hall with leaping strides before entering the library. Seconds later, he held the 7th volume of the Family Chronicle in his hands. Then he opened it. Falco von Falkenstein ran his fingers along its cut-out pages before coming to the stunning realization of what he was, or was not, actually looking at. The 5 stars of the firmament was gone. Cinema at Falkenstein Castle. Bibi and Tina had also gotten up early that morning, although Marie had said they could come to the castle a little later. It was Bibi's witch's nose, itching like crazy, that had woken her up. She had the distinct feeling that something had happened at Falkenstein Castle, and not something good. So she didn't hesitate any longer and rustled Tina awake. "Bibi, what are you doing?" Tina blinked, slightly annoyed that her friend had pulled her out of a beautiful dream. Bibi told her about the strange feeling she had, the feeling that something had happened at Falkenstein Castle. "What do you think happened there, Bibi? It's all in your head." "Maybe," replied Bibi, "but for days I've had a strange feeling, and my nose itches all the time. Please, Tina, we must go to the castle." Hearing this irritated Tina even more. She was tired and wanted to go back to sleep. Besides, she couldn't imagine what Bibi was going on about. But Tina knew her friend, and when Bibi's nose itched, there was usually something worth investigating. She was a witch, after all, and sensed things that others had no idea about. The girls had a hurried breakfast, saddled their horses, and galloped off. Count Falco sunk deep into his reading chair. For the 100th time, he tried to put his thoughts in order. A thief had broken into the library of Falkenstein Castle and stolen the necklace, and that's as far as he got. He absolutely had to talk to someone about the matter, but with whom? Certainly not Aunt Hedwig. The Count groaned desperately at the very thought of his aunt. How could he ever face her again? He'd persuaded her to trust him with the precious necklace, and now it had been stolen. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Shortly afterwards, he heard Bibi and Tina's voices in the hallway. The Count rose from his armchair with a regained sense of hope. Bibi and Tina could be counted on when it mattered. This he knew from experience. The 3 friends went to Alex's room, where the Count's son wanted to show the girls his new chess computer before they went to work. But the last thing they were interested in at the moment was his chess game. Instead, Tina asked him, "Is everything all right at the castle?" "Why shouldn't it be?" Alex replied, surprised. "Well, how should I know? But Bibi has a feeling," she said, throwing a wink to her best friend. "You mean that kind of feeling?" Alex repeated. At that moment, the Count walked in, his face drained of all color. "Father, did something happen?" Alex asked nervously. "Indeed," the Count replied gloomily. "A catastrophe." He let himself collapse into the giant beanbag next to the door and stretched his legs straight out. Tina's jaw dropped as she looked at Bibi. So her friend's inclination had been right once again. In a monotone voice, the Count continued, "The 5 stars of the firmament have been stolen tonight, and Aunt Hedwig's dress has disappeared, and her hat." "What?" cried Tina and Alex at the same time. Alex shook his head. "The necklace, the dress, and the hat? Father, this makes no sense." "But how did the thief get into the castle?" Tina thought out loud. "I wonder that too," said the Count. "I couldn't find any signs of a break-in." "The thief did not break into the castle," Bibi interrupted the Count. "I would rather say he broke out." All eyes were on her. "Bibi Blocksberg," said the Count, outraged. "Please don't joke around in this situation. This is serious." But Bibi wasn't joking. "It was Marie," she said. Now the Count got really angry. "I told you no jokes. Miss Marie is not a thief. Besides, she didn't even know where the necklace was hidden." "She must have found it out somehow," Bibi insisted. "Really, Bibi, how can you make such claims without any proof?" Alex demanded. "I'll prove it," she said calmly. "Let's look in Marie's room." "All right," the Count rose. "But if you're right, Bibi Blocksberg," he didn't dare speak further. It simply could not be true. He had trusted this young woman. But when he knocked on Marie's door shortly afterwards, accompanied by the children, he received no answer. Without further ado, they entered. The room was empty. "Perhaps she went to the market again to do some shopping," the Count remarked, though he knew full well that he didn't believe it himself. Bibi opened the wardrobe. A few empty hangers were dangling inside. Marie had clearly disappeared with all of her belongings. "But how could she possibly know where the necklace was?" asked the Count. Bibi considered the turn of events. She wanted to know in which room the Count had hidden the necklace and when he had last seen it. Falco von Falkenstein told the children about Aunt Hedwig's nightly visit and how he had shown her the secret hiding place in the library. That was around 11 in the evening, he said. At that time, the necklace was still there. I have an idea, Bibi suddenly chimed in. There's a spell. If one knows the place and time, you can replay the past, just like in a movie. You mean we can look at what happened in the library tonight? Tina asked. Bibi nodded. All right, Bibi Blocksberg, announced the Count. You know I usually don't approve of magic, but drastic times call for drastic measures. They made their way to the library, where Bibi drew the curtains and sang out, Eeny, meeny, nightly deeds, with every dawn the past recedes. A family heirloom to protect, reveal upon the wall, project, whiz, whiz. A magic pling-pling resounded as Bibi's witch stars flashed. The entire library appeared to rotate around them, spinning into a full-sized cinema theater with plush curtains and folding seats, and the large white wall opposite the bookshelves had turned into a movie screen. At first, they all waited in a moment of complete darkness. Then, though barely noticeable, they could see the outlines of a shadowy room, with a table in the middle and shelves on the walls. A soft creaking sound could be heard, and only seconds later, a beam of light fell through a crack in the door. A figure entered. The door closed. Then suddenly, the ceiling lamp illuminated the entire room, and they recognized who had entered the library. Aunt Hedwig, cried the Count in astonishment. She climbed up the ladder, surprisingly quick for her age, and purposefully took a book from the shelf. Bibi, Tina, and Alex were amazed. Maybe she couldn't sleep and wanted to get something to read, Alex suspected. The Count shook his head. No, he said, that's not a book for reading. It was the 7th volume of the family chronicle that Aunt Hedwig had taken off the shelf. She put it on the reading table and opened it. Now, everyone else could see what she was looking at. The book was hollow inside, and it contained the diamond necklace given to Johannes so many years ago. The 5 stars of the firmament. Aunt Hedwig took it out and looked at it, smiling, then slid it into a pocket of her dress. Enough, Bibi, cried the Count. Shut it off. Aunt Hedwig has taken the necklace. It wasn't Marie or any burglar. Bibi spoke. Eeny, meeny, thievery's claim. Freeze the past on present frame. Whiz, whiz. Once again, the stars flashed to the pling-pling sound of Bibi's magic. The film stopped. Tina and Alex breathed a sigh of relief. Aunt Hedwig is always good for a surprise, grinned Alex. But this is not Aunt Hedwig, said Bibi firmly. She moved to the wall and pointed to the frozen image. Do you see that? She slid her finger across the picture to a pendant, dangling around the neck of the supposed aunt. What? Cried Tina, astonished. That's Marie's medallion. What's it doing around Aunt Hedwig's neck? I told you, it is not Aunt Hedwig, repeated Bibi. This is Marie, and now I also know why Aunt Hedwig's dress and hat disappeared. You mean, Alex's mind was racing. Marie dressed up as Aunt Hedwig? He struck his forehead with the palm of his hand. Of course! That's why she bought makeup in Falkenstein yesterday. Exactly, Bibi nodded. And after she had disguised herself, the Count continued in a trembling voice, she came to me, and oh no, showed her where the necklace was hidden. The Count pressed his hands against his temples, as if he suddenly had a horrible headache. How could I let myself be fooled like that? Oh, heavens! What shall we do now? If this thing goes public, my reputation will be ruined. I will become the laughingstock of all Falkenstein, but not before Aunt Hedwig tears my head off. Falco von Falkenstein stepped to the window and pulled the curtains aside. Sunlight flooded the room. The Count buried his hands in his pockets and stared out motionlessly, before taking out a small, rectangular card. Well, he began, here is Sergeant Quincy's number. A determined expression came over his face. I'll call him. Right away. This Marie must be put behind bars. Please don't, sir, Bibi implored him. Maybe we can clear up the case ourselves. There is nothing to solve, replied the Count. This case is clear. Marie stole the necklace. The rest is up to the police. But I don't believe Marie is a criminal, she said. I have the feeling that things can still, somehow, work out for the best. Well, the Count hesitated. If we could resolve this matter with as little brouhaha as possible, that would be most in line with my thinking. He turned to Bibi. What do you suggest, Bibi Blocksberg? Bibi took a moment to consider. Tina, Alex, and I will try to stop Marie and get the necklace back, she said. The Count raised an eyebrow. All right, he decided, pulling out his pocket watch. It is shortly before 10 o'clock. If you're not back by 12 sharp, I'll inform Aunt Hedwig and notify Sergeant Quincy. However, one of you," he looked at his son, "must stay here and take care of Aunt Hedwig so that she doesn't get suspicious." "But Alex began to protest, but realized that his father was right. If Bibi and Tina retrieved the necklace and he could distract Aunt Hedwig, she wouldn't even notice that anything was amiss, and that was the best possible outcome. "All right," he nodded. "But where are you actually going to look for Marie?" Alex looked at Bibi and Tina. That was a good question. "We have to put ourselves in her shoes," Tina thought. "Where would you take off to in the middle of the night with a stolen necklace in your pocket?" "To Falkenstein," Alex surmised. "She could get there in an hour on foot, and there's also a train station." Bibi nodded. "But if she really escaped to Falkenstein in the middle of the night—" "I know where she is," cried Tina suddenly. "At the Falkenstein Inn." She had suddenly remembered how Marie had inquired about the inn when they had visited the market in Falkenstein. "Of course, Tina," cried Bibi. "You're right." The next moment, the two friends rushed out the door. "Good luck," Alex and the Count yelled after them.